Hello, dear dreamer, and welcome. If you're here, it means you're searching for something. Perhaps rest for a weary mind, perhaps an escape into worlds beyond our own, perhaps simply a gentle voice to accompany you as you drift towards sleep. Whatever brought you here, you've found the right place. I'm so glad you've joined me on this channel, where we explore the boundaries between waking and dreaming, where stories unfold like flowers in the darkness, where imagination becomes a bridge to peaceful rest. Tonight I have something special for you, a tale of magic and wonder, of a small fairy named Lunaria who embarks on an impossible journey through realms most beings never see. This is a story about courage found in quiet places, about discovering that you are enough exactly as you are, and about the beautiful truth that every ending is simply a new beginning waiting to unfold. Before we begin our journey together, if you're enjoying this content and would like to support the channel, please consider leaving a like. It helps others find these peaceful stories when they need them most. And if you have a moment, I'd love to hear from you in the comments below. Tell me, what brings you here tonight? What are you hoping to dream about? Your words create a community of fellow dreamers, and I read every single comment. If you'd like more stories like this, more journeys into magical realms, more tales to carry you gently into sleep, please subscribe and turn on notifications. There are so many more worlds waiting to be explored together, so many more characters waiting to meet you in your dreams. Now, settle into your most comfortable position. Adjust your pillows, pull your blankets close, let your body sink into the softness beneath you. Take a slow, deep breath in, and let it out, releasing all the tensions of the day. Again, breathe in peace, and breathe out whatever no longer serves you. Let your eyes grow heavy. There's nothing you need to do, nowhere you need to be. For the next hour and a half, you have permission to simply rest, to listen, to let the story wash over you like gentle waves on a distant shore. Are you ready? Then let us begin our journey to the Twilight Garden, where a small fairy named Lunaria is about to discover that she is far braver than she ever imagined. The Luminous Paths, a fairy's journey through the ethereal realms. Part 1, The Twilight Garden. In the space between waking and dreaming, where starlight pools like honey and the air shimmers with possibility, there exists a realm known to few. The Twilight Garden stretches endlessly beneath skies that know neither full darkness nor complete day, painted in perpetual hues of lavender, rose gold, and the softest silver imaginable. Here, among flowers that bloom with their own gentle luminescence, a young fairy named Lunaria was preparing for the journey that would define her existence. Lunaria was smaller than most fairies, no taller than a dandelion stem, with wings that caught the ambient light and refracted it into patterns of deep purple and midnight blue. Her hair fell in waves the color of moonbeams, and her eyes held the quiet wisdom of still waters. She had lived in the Twilight Garden for as long as memory stretched, tending to the dreaming blossoms and whispering songs to the slumbering butterflies that rested on leaves as soft as silk. But tonight was different. Tonight, the elders had called her to the Heart Grove, where the oldest trees grew in spirals toward the sky, their trunks wide enough to house entire fairy colonies, their bark etched with the stories of 10,000 years. As Lunaria made her way along the winding path of crushed pearl and stardust, she noticed how the flowers seemed to lean toward her, their petals releasing gentle fragrances of lavender and chamomile, as if offering comfort for the journey ahead. The Heart Grove stood at the center of the Twilight Garden, and as Lunaria approached, she saw the three elders waiting for her. Elder Vesper, whose wings were translucent as morning mist and whose voice carried the weight of countless seasons. Elder Solène, tall and graceful, with hair that flowed like liquid silver down her back. And Elder Nox, the oldest of them all, whose eyes held galaxies within their depths and whose very presence seemed to slow time itself. Lunaria, Elder Vesper spoke, her voice like wind through willow branches. You have been chosen for the Great Wandering. The Great Wandering. Every fairy knew of it, though few were called to undertake it. It was a journey through all the ethereal realms, from the Twilight Garden to the distant shores of the Forgotten Dawn, through places where reality bent and folded like origami, where thoughts became tangible and dreams walked on solid ground. The realms grow restless, Elder Solène continued, her words measured and calm. The boundaries between them have grown thin. Dreams leak into waking. Memories drift where they should not. We need someone to walk the luminous paths, to strengthen the connections, to remind each realm of its purpose and its peace. Elder Nox stepped forward, placing a gentle hand on Lunaria's shoulder. The touch was warm, grounding, filled with an ancient kindness. You wonder why you were chosen, child. You are small, yes, quiet, but you have always understood what others miss. That the softest voice can carry the farthest in the silence, that the gentlest touch can heal the deepest wounds. The realms do not need force. They need understanding. From within the folds of her luminous robes, Elder Nox withdrew a small crystal vial, no larger than a dewdrop, filled with light that pulsed gently like a heartbeat. This is essence of the Twilight Garden, she explained. When you feel lost, when the way grows dark or confusing, hold this close. It will remind you of home, of peace, of the quiet certainty that exists in this place. Lunaria accepted the vial with trembling hands, hanging it on a delicate chain around her neck. The moment it touched her chest, she felt a warmth spread through her, a reminder of every peaceful evening she had known, every gentle rain, every flower she had tended with care. The first path opens at the Whispering Arch, Elder Vesper said, gesturing toward the far edge of the Heart Grove. Beyond it lies the realm of gentle streams. From there, the luminous paths will guide you if you listen carefully. Lunaria bowed to the elders, her wings catching the ambient light and scattering it in soft patterns across the grove. Then, with a deep breath that seemed to draw in all the peace of the Twilight Garden, she turned and began her journey. The path to the Whispering Arch wound through groves of sleeping flowers and past pools of still water that reflected not the sky above but other skies, other worlds, other possibilities. Lunaria paused at one such pool, gazing down into its depths. There she saw a reflection of herself, but older, wiser, returning from a journey completed. The reflection smiled at her with knowing eyes, then faded like mist in morning sun. The Whispering Arch stood at the edge of the Twilight Garden, formed from intertwined branches of silver birch and flowering vines that bloomed with flowers of pure light. As Lunaria approached, she heard what gave the arch its name. Countless whispers, soft as breath, speaking in languages both familiar and strange. They were the voices of all who had passed through before, their words of encouragement and wisdom layered like leaves in an ancient forest. "Trust the quiet," one whisper said. "Follow the sound of flowing water," said another. "Remember that every ending is a beginning folded over itself," breathed a third. Lunaria stepped through the arch, and the world shifted. Part 2. The Realm of Gentle Streams. The transition was seamless, like stepping from one room into another, except that everything had changed. The perpetual twilight of her home gave way to a softer, more diffuse light, as if the entire world were illuminated from within. Before her stretched a landscape of flowing water. Not rivers exactly, but streams of liquid light that wound through meadows of tall grass that swayed in breezes she could not feel. The streams flowed in impossible ways, sometimes upward, sometimes in spirals, sometimes splitting into fractals that reunited further along their paths. They sang as they moved, each stream carrying its own melody, and together they created a symphony that was at once complex and deeply, profoundly peaceful. Lunaria found herself standing on the bank of one such stream, its waters clear as crystal and glowing with a gentle azure light. As she watched, she noticed figures moving within the water. Not fish, but something else. They were memories, she realized. Fragments of remembered moments from thousands of lives, flowing endlessly through this realm. A voice spoke beside her, and Lunaria turned to find another fairy, taller than herself, with wings of translucent green like young leaves in spring. This fairy's eyes were kind, creased at the corners with the evidence of much smiling. "First time in the realm of gentle streams?" the fairy asked, her voice carrying the musical quality of the waters around them. Lunaria nodded. "I'm on the Great Wandering," The elders sent me to walk the luminous paths. The green-winged fairy's expression softened with understanding. Ah, a pathwalker. I am River Mist. I tend the streams here, help guide the memories to where they need to flow. Would you like to understand this realm before you continue on? Yes, please, Lunaria replied, grateful for a guide in this strange new world. River Mist gestured for Lunaria to follow, and together they walked along the bank of the glowing stream. Every thought, every moment of peace or joy or contentment that any being has ever experienced, these flow through here, River Mist explained. The realm of gentle streams is where positive memories come to rest and renew before returning to those who need them. She knelt beside the water and dipped her hand in. When she withdrew it, a drop of the luminous water clung to her finger, and within it, Lunaria could see a scene playing out. A human child, laughing as they splashed in a fountain on a summer day, the sun warm on their face and the world full of possibility. This memory has flowed here many times, River Mist said softly. Each time the person who lived it feels anxious or afraid, this memory returns to them, reminding them of simpler, happier times. And then, when it has served its purpose, it flows back here to rest and restore its clarity. It's beautiful, Lunaria whispered. It is necessary, River Mist replied. Without this realm, the weight of difficult times would crush many spirits. Here, the good memories are preserved, kept pure and ready to offer comfort. They walked further, and Lunaria noticed that some streams flowed more slowly than others, their waters thick and syrupy. Those are the fading memories, River Mist explained. Ones that are not visited often, that their owners are beginning to forget. We tend them carefully, for sometimes a memory long forgotten is exactly what someone needs to remember who they once were. As they walked, Lunaria began to feel the rhythm of this realm, the gentle pulse of its existence. It was like a heartbeat, steady and reassuring, the sound of countless peaceful moments flowing endlessly onward. The next path, River Mist said eventually, pointing toward a place where 7 streams converged into a small waterfall that fell upward into the sky, defying all natural law, lies through there. You must let yourself fall upward. Trust that the waters will carry you. Lunaria looked at the impossible waterfall with uncertainty. What if I'm too heavy? What if I fall back down? River Mist smiled. In this realm, you are only as heavy as your doubts. Let them go, even for a moment, and you will rise like a bubble in champagne. Taking a deep breath, Lunaria approached the base of the upward waterfall. She could feel the spray on her face, cool and refreshing, carrying with it fragments of joyful laughter and warm embraces. She thought of the Twilight Garden, of the trust the elders had placed in her. She thought of the vial of light around her neck, pulsing gently against her chest. Then she stepped into the water and let go. Immediately, she felt herself lifted, drawn upward by currents of pure joy and contentment. The water rushed around her, through her, carrying her higher and higher. She passed through clouds of condensed memory, each one brushing against her consciousness with images of beloved faces, cherished places, moments of perfect peace. Up and up she rose until the realm of gentle streams became a patchwork of glowing rivers far below, and above her, a new sky opened, one painted in shades of amber and gold, with clouds that drifted like continents across an endless ocean of air. The water released her gently onto solid ground, and Lunaria found herself in a new realm entirely. Part 3. The Amber Highlands. The Amber Highlands stretched before her in rolling hills of tall grass that swayed in constant, gentle motion. The sky above was perpetually sunset, with clouds edged in gold and the whole world bathed in warm, honeyed light. The air here was different, thicker, almost carrying with it the scent of ripening grain and distant flowers. Lunaria walked through the grass, which came up to her shoulders, each blade warm to the touch and singing in a voice too quiet to hear but strong enough to feel. This was a realm of harvest, she realized, of culmination and satisfaction, a place where things came to fruition. In the distance, she could see structures rising from the hills, not buildings exactly, but formations of crystallized amber, grown into shapes that suggested habitation without requiring it. They glowed from within, casting long shadows across the golden grass. As Lunaria approached the nearest formation, a figure emerged from within it. This was not a fairy but something else, a being of pure amber light, roughly humanoid in shape but flowing and shifting like honey poured from a jar. When it spoke, its voice resonated like a cello, deep and warm. "Welcome, walker of paths, to the Amber Highlands. I am Soul Crest, keeper of this realm's heart flame." Lunaria bowed respectfully. "I'm honored to be here. I'm traveling the luminous paths, learning the realms." Soul Crest moved closer, and Lunaria could see that within the being's translucent form, there were seeds, thousands of them, suspended and glowing with their own internal light. "Each realm has its purpose," Soul Crest said. "The Twilight Garden is for rest, the gentle streams for memory and comfort. Here, in the Amber Highlands, we preserve potential." "Potential?" Lunaria asked. Soul Crest gestured to the landscape around them. "Every dream that was never dreamed, every story that was never told, every song that was never sung, they come here as seeds. We preserve them in amber, keep them safe, until someone ready to dream them comes along." The being reached into its own chest and withdrew a single seed, glowing with an inner fire of emerald green. "This, for instance, is a story about a kingdom beneath the ocean where creatures of coral and pearl live in harmony with the tides. Someone thought of it once, long ago, but died before they could write it down. Here it waits, perfect and patient, for another dreamer to find it and give it life." Lunaria felt a sudden sadness. But what if no one ever comes? What if these dreams wait forever? "Then they wait," Soul Crest said simply. "There is no tragedy in patient potential. These seeds are happy here, warm in the amber light, surrounded by countless companions. And sometimes, the being's voice took on a note of quiet joy. Sometimes a dreamer comes and takes away hundreds of seeds all at once, and we watch as new worlds are born from old potential. Those are days of celebration." They walked together through the Amber Highlands, Soul Crest showing Lunaria the great preserves where seeds were kept in vast amber chambers, each one catalogued by feeling rather than label. Dreams of adventure here, dreams of quiet contentment there, dreams of love and connection in another section, dreams of discovery and wonder in another. "You may take one if you wish," Soul Crest offered. "Every walker of the luminous paths is permitted to carry a seed with them. Not to plant, that is not your purpose, but to remind you that potential always exists, that new beginnings are always possible." Lunaria moved among the seeds, feeling their various resonances. Some called to her with visions of grand adventure, others with promises of deep wisdom. But one in particular drew her attention, a small seed, barely larger than a grain of sand, that glowed with a soft violet light. When she touched it, she felt what it contained. A dream of a garden where flowers bloomed in the dark, where night-blooming species created their own ecosystems, where beauty existed for itself without need of witness. It reminded her of home, but also of something new, something yet to be discovered. "This one," she said quietly, and Soul Crest nodded in approval. "A good choice. A humble dream but powerful. Keep it safe." Lunaria placed the seed in a small pouch at her waist, next to the vial of twilight essence the elders had given her. Already, she could feel how the items she carried were becoming part of her journey, each one a reminder of where she had been and what she had learned. "The next path," Soul Crest said, guiding her toward the far edge of the Amber Highlands, "is more challenging. You must cross the singing chasm to reach the realm of echoes. The chasm is wide and deep, and the wind that blows through it carries voices, some helpful, some misleading. You must listen carefully to know which to follow." They crested a final hill, and Lunaria saw it. A vast chasm splitting the earth, so deep that its bottom was lost in darkness, so wide that the far side was barely visible through the golden haze. And from its depths rose a sound unlike anything she had heard before. Thousands of voices, singing, speaking, laughing, crying, all woven together in a tapestry of sound that was both beautiful and overwhelming. "How do I cross?" Lunaria asked, her small voice nearly lost in the chorus rising from below. "There are bridges," Soul Crest replied, "but you cannot see them. They are made of sound itself, woven from true words and honest feelings. Step out when you hear a truth that resonates with your core, and the bridge will hold you. Step on a falsehood or a manipulation, and you will fall. Lunaria felt a flutter of fear in her chest, and instinctively reached for the vial around her neck. Its gentle pulse reminded her of the Elder's trust, of the peace of the Twilight Garden, of her own quiet strength. "Thank you, Soul Crest," she said, turning to the amber being, "for your wisdom and kindness." "Travel well, small one," Soul Crest replied, its voice warm as summer rain. "May the paths rise to meet you." Lunaria approached the edge of the singing chasm and listened. At first, the voices were too many, too tangled, impossible to separate. But gradually, as she focused, individual voices began to emerge from the chaos. "Turn back, you're too small for this journey," one voice said, sharp and cutting. "Leap now, don't think, just trust," another urged, frantic and desperate. "You were never meant to leave the garden," a third whispered, sad and resigned. But then, cutting through them all, she heard a voice that resonated deep in her chest. "Every step forward is an act of faith, and faith need not be loud to be true." Yes, Lunaria thought, that is truth. She stepped out over the chasm, onto what should have been empty air, and her foot found solid ground. A bridge of woven sound materialized beneath her, visible only where her feet touched it, glowing with a soft blue light. One step at a time, listening carefully, following only the voices that spoke truth, Lunaria crossed the singing chasm. Part 4. The Realm of Echoes. On the far side of the chasm, the world had changed again. Here everything repeated. The hills rolled in identical patterns, the clouds overhead moved in perfect symmetry, and when Lunaria took a step, the sound of it came back to her 3 times, from 3 different directions. This was the realm of echoes, where patterns lived and repeated themselves into infinity. It was not unpleasant. There was something almost meditative about the repetition, but it was disorienting. Every movement created ripples that reflected back, every sound bounced and returned, every thought seemed to spiral outward and then inward again. Lunaria walked carefully, noticing how her footsteps created a rhythm that built upon itself, each echo adding to the last until she was walking to a beat of her own making. The grass here was silver, each blade perfectly matched to the next, creating a sea of shimmering uniformity that stretched to the horizon. In the center of this realm stood a structure unlike anything in the previous worlds, a labyrinth made of mirrors, each surface reflecting not just images but sounds, feelings, and possibilities. As Lunaria approached, a figure stepped out from the labyrinth's entrance. This fairy was her exact double, identical in every detail except for the eyes. Where Lunaria's eyes were deep and thoughtful, this fairy's eyes were crystalline and clear, showing every reflection, every echo, every pattern without interpretation. "I am Miraluna," the fairy said, and even her voice was an echo of Lunaria's own. "I am the Echo Keeper, and I am you, or at least, I am the pattern of you that exists in this realm." Lunaria studied her double with curiosity rather than fear. Why does this realm exist? What purpose do echoes serve? Miraluna smiled. "Come, walk with me through the labyrinth, and I will show you." They entered the mirror maze together, and immediately Lunaria was surrounded by infinite reflections of herself, each one slightly different. One older, one younger, one braver, one more afraid, one who had made different choices, one who had never left the Twilight Garden. "These are not just reflections," Miraluna explained. "They are patterns. The realm of echoes exists because patterns are the foundation of existence itself. Day and night, the seasons, heartbeats, breath, all patterns. Without repetition there is chaos. Without echoes there is no rhythm, no cycle, no return." They turned a corner, and the reflections changed. Now Lunaria saw not herself but patterns in nature. The spiral of a nautilus shell, the branching of a tree, the hexagonal perfection of a honeycomb, the recursive beauty of a fern frond. "Everything that exists does so according to patterns," Miraluna continued. "And patterns must be preserved, must be echoed forward into the future, or everything unravels into randomness. But too much pattern is stifling," Lunaria said thoughtfully. Too much repetition and nothing new can emerge. Miraluna turned to her with an expression of deep satisfaction. Yes, exactly yes. And that is why walkers of the luminous paths are needed. You move between the realms, carrying newness from one to another, preventing any realm from becoming too rigid in its pattern. You are the variation within the repetition, the new note in the eternal song. They walked deeper into the labyrinth, and the mirrors began to show not reflections but possibilities. Futures that might be, pasts that could have been, presents that existed in parallel to this one. In one mirror, Lunaria saw herself as elder of the Twilight Garden, ancient and wise. In another, she saw herself choosing to stay in the Amber Highlands, tending seeds of potential forever. In another, she saw herself lost in the chasm, having trusted the wrong voice. Are these real? Lunaria asked quietly. They are as real as they need to be, Miraluna replied. They are the echoes of choice, the patterns of possibility. Every decision you make creates new patterns, new echoes, new futures. The labyrinth shows you this so you understand the weight and the lightness of choice. Weight because each choice matters. Lightness because there are always more choices to come. At the center of the labyrinth, they found a chamber where the mirrors fell away, replaced by a pool of perfectly still water. When Lunaria looked into it, she saw not her reflection but the pattern of her journey so far. The Twilight Garden, the gentle streams, the Amber Highlands, the singing chasm, and now here, the realm of echoes. Each realm was connected to the next by threads of light, and those threads pulsed with a gentle rhythm, like a heartbeat, like a song. This is the pattern of paths, Miraluna said reverently. Every walker who has ever journeyed the luminous paths has added to it, their unique journey creating a new variation on the theme. When you complete your journey, your pattern will join theirs, and future walkers will be able to see it, learn from it, draw strength from it. Lunaria felt a profound sense of connection, looking at those threads of light. She was not alone in this journey. She was part of something larger, something that had existed long before her and would continue long after. How do I leave this realm? She asked. Miraluna pointed to the pool. Dive in. The still water leads to the Restless Ocean. It will be a shock, from perfect pattern to constant change, but you are ready. Lunaria knelt beside the pool, her reflection gazing back at her with calm determination. She touched the vial at her neck, twilight peace. She touched the pouch at her waist, amber potential. She carried with her everything she needed. Thank you, Miraluna, she said to her echo self. Thank you, Lunaria, Miraluna replied, for being the variation I could never be. Lunaria dove into the still pool, and the world exploded into motion. Part 5. The Restless Ocean. Water everywhere in constant motion. Waves rose and fell in patterns that seemed almost familiar before shifting into something new. The sky above was turbulent with clouds that raced across it, changing color and shape moment by moment. The water itself was not one color but all colors, shifting from deepest blue to pale green to silver to colors that had no names in any language Lunaria knew. She found herself floating on the surface, her wings spread like a raft, bobbing with the waves. This realm was the opposite of everything that had come before. Where the Twilight Garden was still, this was motion. Where the echoes were pattern, this was chaos. Where the Amber Highlands were preservation, this was constant transformation. A wave lifted her high, and from its crest, Lunaria could see that the ocean stretched endlessly in all directions. No land, no markers, no way to know which direction to travel. For the first time in her journey, she felt truly lost. But then she remembered what Elder Knox had said. When the way grows dark or confusing, hold this close. She wrapped her hand around the vial of twilight essence, and immediately felt its pulse, steady and sure. And she realized something. The vial wasn't just pulsing randomly, it had rhythm. And that rhythm was pointing her in a direction. Lunaria began to swim, following the rhythm of the vial. Her small wings, useless in the water, she folded against her back. Her arms pulled her forward, and her legs kicked, and slowly, steadily, she made her way through the restless ocean. As she swam, she began to notice inhabitants of this realm. They were beings made of water itself, their forms constantly shifting and flowing, never holding one shape for more than a moment. They danced around her, playful and curious, their voices like the sound of rain on ocean surface. One swirled close to her, condensing into a vaguely fairy-like shape. New traveler, yes. We see few from other realms. Most find the constant change too unsettling. It's different from what I know, Lunaria admitted, still swimming. But it's beautiful in its own way. Why does this realm exist? What is its purpose? The water being laughed, a sound like bubbles rising. Purpose. We are change itself. Without change, everything stagnates. The gentle streams would clog with too many memories. The Amber Highlands would overflow with seeds never planted. The echoes would repeat until reality itself wore thin from the repetition. We are the force that prevents stagnation, the current that keeps everything flowing. Another water being joined them, this one briefly taking the shape of a dolphin before dissolving into a spiral. We are also adaptation. In the restless ocean, nothing can survive without learning to change. See, the being touched Lunaria's arm, and she felt a strange sensation ripple through her. Looking down, she saw that her skin had taken on a slight iridescence, like fish scales. Now you can breathe underwater, the being explained. You adapted. To test this, Lunaria dove beneath the surface, and found it was true. She could breathe the water as easily as air. Below the surface, the restless ocean was even more magnificent. Schools of creatures made of light swam in complex patterns. Coral grew and died and grew again in moments, and great currents flowed like rivers through the sea, carrying with them the debris and detritus of all the realms, breaking everything down, transforming it, sending it back out as something new. This is where old things come to be recycled, the dolphin being explained, swimming beside her. When a memory in the gentle streams grows too faded to restore, it flows here, and we break it down into pure emotion, pure essence. When a seed in the Amber Highlands waits too long and begins to decay, it comes here, and we transform its potential into other forms. When a pattern in the echoes grows too rigid, we shatter it and let the pieces reform in new ways. Lunaria swam deeper, following the pulse of her vial, and found herself in a place where the water was darker, colder. Here, massive shapes moved in the deep, beings of such size that she could only see parts of them at a time. A fin larger than the heart grove, an eye like a full moon. These were the deep changers, the oldest forces of transformation, the ones who broke down the greatest structures and reconstructed them into new configurations. They paid her no attention, focused on their eternal work, and Lunaria felt grateful for their disinterest. There was something almost frightening in their power, in the absolute certainty with which they transformed everything they touched. But the vial's pulse was leading her even deeper, to a place where the water grew still again, paradoxically still given the realm it existed within. And there, at what must have been the ocean's floor, she found a door. It was made of wood, ancient and barnacle-encrusted, set into stone, utterly impossible and yet absolutely present. The vial at her neck pulsed strongest here, as if saying, "This is the way, this is the path." Lunaria touched the door, and it swung open silently. Beyond it was not more water but air and light, and the sound of wind through grass. She swam through the doorway, felt the water fall away from her like a shed skin, and found herself stepping into a new realm, completely dry, as if the ocean had been a dream. Part 6. The Whispering Plains. The Whispering Plains stretched before her, vast and open, covered in grass so tall and so fine that it moved in waves even in the stillest air. The sky here was pale, almost white, with clouds like brushstrokes of gray watercolor drifting slowly overhead. Everything was quiet except for the grass, which whispered constantly, speaking in a language just at the edge of comprehension. Lunaria walked slowly through this realm, her hand trailing along the tops of the grass, feeling the soft tickle of it against her palm. The whispers grew louder as she moved, not in volume but in clarity, and she began to understand what they were saying. They were speaking the thoughts of sleepers, she realized. Every being across all realms who was currently asleep, dreaming, their thoughts drifted here and manifested as whispers in the grass. She heard fragments: a human worried about a coming test, a fox dreaming of hunting, a tree dreaming slow dreams of seasons, a child hoping their lost toy would be found, an elder remembering a love long past. The whispers were not organized or coherent. They tumbled over each other, mixed and blended, creating a constant susurrus that was both soothing and slightly melancholic. These were the unguarded thoughts, the honest feelings that only emerged in sleep, when all walls were down and all masks removed. As Lunaria walked, she noticed structures rising from the plains. Great standing stones, arranged in circles and lines, covered in writing that glowed faintly in the pale light. She approached the nearest circle and read the words carved there. They were dream wishes, she realized. Things that sleepers had wished for so fervently that their wishes had solidified into stone. I wished to be brave. I wished to find my way home. I wished to be understood. I wish for my pain to ease. I wished to matter. Simple wishes, profound wishes, the deep desires of countless hearts made solid and permanent. Lunaria placed her hand on one stone. I wished to be enough, and felt the yearning in it, the deep need for self-acceptance that had driven someone to wish so hard their dream carved itself into reality. The whispering plains remember every wish, a voice said, and Lunaria turned to find an ancient fairy sitting atop one of the standing stones. This fairy's wings were tattered and torn like old paper, but her eyes were bright and knowing. I am Dreamkeeper Sora. I tend this realm, though tending might be too active a word. Mostly I listen. I witness. I remember. There are so many wishes, Lunaria said softly, looking at the hundreds of stone circles stretching to the horizon. Every being that dreams leaves wishes here, Sora replied, climbing down from her perch with surprising agility. Most are never granted. Most can't be. But they still matter. The wishing itself matters. They walked together through the plains, the grass whispering around them, the stones standing in silent testament to countless hopes. You're wondering why this realm exists, Sora said, reading Lunaria's thoughtful expression. Why preserve wishes that will never come true? Yes, Lunaria admitted. Because hope itself is sacred, Sora replied simply. Even unfulfilled hope, even impossible hope. The act of wishing, of hoping, of wanting something better, that act is what keeps beings from surrendering to despair. These stones aren't monuments to failure. They're monuments to resilience, to the stubborn refusal to stop hoping even when hope seems foolish. Lunaria felt tears prick at her eyes, thinking of all the wishes surrounding her, all the quiet hopes of sleeping hearts. But some wishes do come true, she asked. Sora smiled. Some do. When a wish is made with such clarity, such genuine need, and when the circumstances align, the wish stones resonate with other realms. A seed of potential in the Amber Highlands might be drawn to a wish here, creating a connection that manifests as opportunity. A memory in the gentle streams might flow toward a wish, creating the motivation needed to pursue a dream. The realms work together, in ways too subtle for most to see. They walked further, and the stones grew taller, older, the wishes carved on them in languages long forgotten. These are ancient wishes, Sora explained. From beings long gone, from species that no longer exist, from worlds that have ended. But their hopes remain, preserved here, adding to the great tapestry of desire that drives all existence forward. At the heart of the whispering plains, they came to a place where the grass fell away, revealing dark, rich earth. And in that earth, a single flower grew, unlike anything in the Twilight Garden, unlike anything Lunaria had ever seen. Its petals were translucent, showing the veins within like stained glass, and it glowed with a light that seemed to come from hope itself. The wishing bloom, Sora said reverently. It grows from the accumulated hope of all the wishes ever made. Once every 1,000 years, it releases a single seed, and that seed contains the power to grant a single wish. Any wish, no matter how impossible. But the seed chooses who receives it. It cannot be taken, only given. Lunaria knelt before the flower, studying its delicate beauty. As she watched, one of its petals shifted slightly, and a drop of luminous nectar formed at its tip. The drop fell, and where it touched the earth, a tiny sprout emerged, grew, bloomed, and faded all in the space of 3 heartbeats. "Everything here is born from hoping," Sora said softly. "Even the grass, even the earth itself. This realm exists because beings refuse to give up on their dreams, no matter how distant those dreams might be." "Where do I go from here?" Lunaria asked, feeling the weight of all the wishes surrounding her, the hopes of countless hearts pressing gently against her awareness. Sora pointed toward the horizon, where the pale sky met the whispering grass. "Beyond the edge of the plains lies the forest of forgetting. It is perhaps the most difficult realm you will encounter, for it is where lost things go. Lost memories, lost time, lost selves. Many who enter become lost themselves. But you carry the vial of twilight essence, the seed of amber potential, and now," she reached down and plucked a single blade of the whispering grass, "you carry a fragment of hope as well." She handed the grass blade to Lunaria, and though it had been severed from its roots, it continued to whisper softly, carrying with it the echo of a child's wish. "I wish to find my way home." Lunaria tucked the grass blade carefully into her pouch alongside the glowing seed. Her collection of talismans was growing, each one a reminder of the realms she had traveled, the truths she had learned. "Thank you, Dreamkeeper Sora," Lunaria said, bowing deeply, "for showing me that even unfulfilled wishes have meaning." "Thank you, Walker," Sora replied, "for carrying our hopes forward into other realms. Sometimes that's all hope needs, to be acknowledged, to be witnessed, to be carried just a little further." Lunaria walked toward the horizon, the whispering grass gradually growing shorter, the standing stones becoming less frequent, until finally she stood at the edge of the whispering plains, looking into something entirely different. Part 7. The Forest of Forgetting. The transition was abrupt and jarring. One moment she stood in pale openness, the next she was enveloped by dense, ancient forest. The trees here were massive, their trunks thick as houses, their branches interweaving overhead to create a canopy so dense that almost no light penetrated. What little light did filter through was gray and uncertain, making everything seem slightly unreal, slightly distant. The air smelled of moss and decay, of things returning to earth, of endings without clear beginnings. And it was quiet, terribly, profoundly quiet. The whispering of the grass had fallen silent the moment she crossed the threshold, and now there was nothing but the soft sound of her own breathing and the occasional creak of ancient wood. Lunaria walked carefully, her feet finding a narrow path that wound between the massive trunks. The path itself seemed uncertain, fading in and out as if it couldn't quite remember where it was supposed to lead. As she walked, she began to notice things scattered throughout the forest. Objects half buried in moss, slowly being reclaimed by the earth. A child's toy worn smooth by time. A letter, its ink faded to illegibility. A piece of jewelry, tarnished and forgotten. A book with blank pages, its words somehow erased. These were lost things, she realized. Things that people had misplaced and never found. Things that had slipped through the cracks of memory and ended up here, slowly dissolving back into the fundamental substance of existence. But there were other things too, stranger things. She saw what looked like doorways standing alone with no walls attached, leading nowhere. She saw staircases that climbed up into the canopy and simply ended. She saw mirrors that reflected nothing, windows that looked out onto darkness. And then she began to see the truly unsettling things. Fragments of people themselves. A laugh, hanging in the air like a soap bubble, repeating over and over without context. A name, carved into a tree trunk, but the person who owned it long gone from all memory. A childhood fear, manifested as a shadow that didn't quite match the shape of what cast it. "This is where we go when we are forgotten," a voice said, and Lunaria turned to find a figure sitting on a fallen log. It was hard to focus on the figure. They seemed to shift and blur, as if her eyes couldn't quite hold onto their features. One moment they appeared to be an elderly man, the next a young woman, then a child, then something not quite human at all. "Who are you?" Lunaria asked. "I don't remember," the figure replied, and there was infinite sadness in those words. "I was someone once, someone important to someone, But they forgot me, and when they did, I came here. Now I'm forgetting myself. Soon I won't be anything at all." Lunaria felt a chill run through her. Is that what happens to everything here? Complete dissolution. Eventually, the figure said, their form wavering like heat shimmer. Unless someone remembers. That's the only thing that can pull something back from the forest of forgetting. To be remembered, to be thought of, to matter again to someone, somewhere. The figure stood, or perhaps sat, it was hard to tell. You should be careful, little fairy. This forest doesn't just hold forgotten things. It actively forgets. The longer you stay, the more you'll forget about yourself. Why you came here. Where you're from. Who you are. Stay too long, and you'll become another lost thing, wandering forever. Lunaria clutched the vial at her neck, feeling its steady pulse. The Twilight Garden. She had come from the Twilight Garden. She was Lunaria. She was walking the luminous paths. She held on to these truths like anchors. How do I pass through without becoming lost? She asked. The figure tilted their head, or perhaps their whole body. It was impossible to tell. Remember why you're here. Remember who you are. Remember that you matter. Keep those truths close, and the forest cannot claim you. But if you doubt, if you question your own significance, the forest will pull you down into forgetting like quicksand. The figure began to fade, becoming more transparent. I'm forgetting again, they said, their voice growing distant. I wish I could remember my name. Just my name. That would be enough. And then they were gone, dissolved into the gray air like morning mist. Lunaria continued forward, her heart heavy with the encounter. She passed more lost things. A wedding ring slowly sinking into moss, a song hummed by no one, fragments of conversations that would never be completed, photographs with faces blurred beyond recognition. The path grew fainter, harder to follow. The trees seemed to press closer, and Lunaria began to feel the forest's influence, a gentle tugging at her memories, as if something were trying to pull them free like threads from a tapestry. What was her mother's face like? She tried to remember and found the image fuzzy, unclear. Had she ever had a mother? She must have. All fairies came from somewhere. But the memory wouldn't come into focus. Panic fluttered in her chest, and she immediately grasped the vial. Its pulse reminded her. The Twilight Garden. Elders. Elder Vesper, Elder Solène, Elder Nox. The faces came back into focus, sharp and clear. She was Lunaria. She had come from the Twilight Garden. She was walking the luminous paths to help strengthen the connections between realms. She pulled out the seed from the Amber Highlands, felt its potential thrumming against her palm. She touched the whispering grass blade, heard its eternal wish. These things were real. She was real. Her journey was real. Armed with these certainties, she pushed forward. The forest grew darker, denser. The lost things became more numerous, more personal. She saw entire lives scattered like fallen leaves, a career abandoned, a friendship dissolved, a dream given up. Each one whispered to her as she passed, "You'll end up like us. You'll be forgotten too. Everyone is, eventually." But Lunaria kept walking, kept remembering, kept holding tight to her sense of self. Finally, after what felt like hours or days or years, time was uncertain in the forest of forgetting. She saw something ahead that wasn't gray, wasn't dissolving, wasn't lost. It was a light, small but steady, warm and inviting. She moved toward it, and the light grew stronger, revealing itself to be a lantern hanging from a hook outside a small cottage. The cottage was the only solid, certain thing she had seen since entering the forest. It had strong walls, a thatched roof, smoke rising from a chimney. It looked real in a way that nothing else here did. Lunaria approached the door and knocked. It opened immediately, revealing a fairy unlike any she had met before. This fairy was old, truly deeply old, with skin like birch bark and hair like silver lichen. But her eyes were bright and sharp, missing nothing, and when she smiled, it was with genuine warmth. "A walker of the luminous paths," the old fairy said. "We don't get many of those anymore. Come in, come in. I am Memoria, the keeper of the last remembering." The cottage interior was cozy and cluttered, filled with objects that all had one thing in common. They were well loved, well remembered. Teacup with a chip in it. A worn book with notes in the margins. A quilt stitched from fabric with stories attached to each square. These things wouldn't be lost, Lunaria realized. They were too deeply embedded in someone's memory. "Sit, child," Memoria said, guiding Lunaria to a comfortable chair by the fire. "You've done well to make it this far without losing yourself. The forest of forgetting claims most who enter unprepared." "Why does this realm exist?" Lunaria asked, accepting a cup of tea that tasted like comfort itself. "It seems so cruel." Memoria settled into her own chair with a sigh. "Cruel, perhaps, but also necessary. Think of it this way. If nothing was ever forgotten, if every moment, every object, every person was remembered forever, the weight of it all would be crushing. Minds would overflow. New memories would have nowhere to grow. The forest of forgetting is where things go to release their hold on existence, to return to the primordial substance from which new things can be made." She took a sip of her own tea. "But you're right that it's sad. That's why I'm here. I am the last stop before complete forgetting. People who sense they're being forgotten, objects on the verge of being lost forever, they come to me first if they can find the way. And I remember them. I hold them in my memory, preserve them at least for a while longer. Sometimes that's enough to keep them from dissolving entirely." "Can things ever be recovered from here?" Lunaria asked. "If someone suddenly remembers them again." "Oh yes," Memoria said, her eyes lighting up. "That's the beautiful part. When someone genuinely remembers, truly brings something back into their mind and heart, that thing can return from even the deepest forgetting. I've seen toys appear back in children's rooms. I've seen lost loves reunited. I've seen forgotten dreams suddenly bloom again in someone's mind. Memory is the magic that binds existence together." She set down her teacup and looked at Lunaria with serious intensity. "That's why your journey matters, Walker. As you move through the realms, you carry memories of each place with you. You remember them, keep them connected, prevent them from drifting too far apart and forgetting they're part of the same great tapestry. You are a living thread, stitching the realms together." Lunaria felt the weight of this responsibility, but also its rightness. "Where do I go from here?" Memoria stood and opened a cabinet, withdrawing a small silver compass. But instead of cardinal directions, its needle pointed toward concepts. "Remember, forget, discover, return. This will guide you through the last leg of the forest and into the next realm. The needle knows what you need to move toward. Trust it, even when it seems to point in impossible directions." She pressed the compass into Lunaria's hand. "The next realm is the Garden of Mirrors. It's where beings go to understand themselves, to see all the versions of who they are and who they might have been. It can be enlightening or maddening, depending on whether you can accept what you see." Lunaria stood, tucking the compass carefully into her pouch alongside her other treasures. She had collected quite a collection now. The vial of twilight essence, the seed of amber potential, the blade of whispering grass carrying a wish, and now this compass of memory. "Thank you, Memoria," she said sincerely, "for being the one who remembers when everyone else forgets." "Thank you, Lunaria," Memoria replied, "for making this journey, for being brave enough to walk between worlds when it would be so much easier to stay safe in one place." Lunaria stepped back out into the gray forest, but now she carried Memoria's lantern. The old fairy had insisted. Its light pushed back the forgetting, created a circle of clarity around her. And when she consulted the compass, its needle pointed steadily toward discover. She followed that direction, and gradually the forest began to thin. The gray light brightened. The trees grew smaller, younger, more vibrant. And finally, she stepped out of the forest of forgetting and into something entirely new. Part 8. The Garden of Mirrors. The Garden of Mirrors was exactly what its name suggested. A vast garden where every surface reflected. Flowers had petals of polished silver. Pools of water were so still and clear they showed perfect reflections. Trees grew with bark like mirrors, leaves like glass. The sky itself seemed reflective, showing not clouds but possibilities, potentialities, versions of what might be. And everywhere, as Lunaria walked the winding paths, she saw herself, not just her reflection but variations. Here was Lunaria as she might have been if she had refused the call to journey, grown old in the Twilight Garden, safe but stagnant. There was Lunaria who had fallen in the singing chasm. Her journey ended before it had truly begun. There was Lunaria who had become lost in the forest of forgetting, now a vague shadow of who she once was. But there were also brighter reflections. Lunaria who had completed the great wandering and become an elder herself, wise and powerful. Lunaria who had chosen to stay in one of the realms, finding her true calling there. Lunaria who had discovered powers and abilities she didn't know she possessed. It was overwhelming, seeing all these versions of herself, all these possible paths her life might take. Some reflections called to her, showing desirable futures. Others repelled her, showing mistakes and failures. All of them were real, in a sense, real possibilities, real potentials, real versions that could exist if certain choices were made or certain chances taken. Lunaria walked deeper into the garden, past reflection after reflection, until she came to a central pavilion made entirely of mirrors arranged in a complex geometric pattern. At the center of this pavilion stood a figure, and Lunaria gasped when she saw them. It was herself, but not a reflection. This was something more, a culmination, perhaps, or a synthesis. This version of Lunaria glowed with inner light, her wings vast and magnificent, her bearing confident and strong. She looked like what Lunaria might become if everything went right, if she learned all the lessons, if she grew into her fullest potential. "Hello," the luminous Lunaria said, her voice like crystal chimes. "I am who you could be. Not who you will be, that's not certain, but who you could be if you choose wisely, if you stay true to your path." "Are you real?" Lunaria asked. "As real as potential ever is," the luminous version replied. "I exist in the space of possibility. Whether I become actual depends entirely on you." They walked together through the pavilion, surrounded by mirrors showing countless versions of Lunaria at different ages, in different circumstances, making different choices. The Garden of Mirrors exists to show beings their full range of possibility, the luminous Lunaria explained. So many beings go through life thinking they have only one path, one way to be, one destiny. But reality is far more fluid than that. Every choice creates a branch, a new possibility. This garden shows those branches, makes them visible. "But isn't it paralyzing?" Lunaria asked. "Seeing all these possibilities, knowing that choosing one path means letting others go?" "It can be," the luminous version agreed. "That's why this realm is dangerous. Many who come here become frozen by choice, unable to decide, wanting to be all versions of themselves simultaneously. They stand among the mirrors forever, aging in place, becoming neither one thing nor another." She gestured to the sides of the path, and Lunaria noticed figures she had missed before. Fairies and other beings standing perfectly still among the mirrors, their eyes glazed, caught in an eternal moment of indecision. "How do you avoid becoming trapped?" Lunaria asked, feeling a flutter of fear. "By accepting that you cannot be everything," the luminous Lunaria said gently. "By choosing deliberately, knowing that every choice excludes others and being at peace with that. The tragedy isn't in the paths not taken, it's in never choosing a path at all." They reached the far side of the pavilion, where the mirrors opened onto a garden of normal flowers, blessedly simple and unreflective. But before Lunaria could step through, her luminous self placed a hand on her shoulder. "Look into this last mirror," she said, indicating a particularly large and clear mirror beside the exit. "Not at the other yous, but at yourself as you are right now. Really look." Lunaria turned to the mirror and saw herself. Small, yes. Still learning, still journeying, still uncertain about so much. Her wings were beautiful but not magnificent. Her bearing was gentle but not commanding. She was, in so many ways, ordinary. But she had made it this far. through the gentle streams, across the Amber Highlands, over the singing chasm, through the realm of echoes, across the restless ocean, past the whispering plains, and out of the forest of forgetting. She carried with her the gifts of each realm. She had faced each challenge with courage, even when afraid. She was enough exactly as she was. "There," the luminous Lunaria said softly. "That's the most important reflection in this entire garden. Not who you could be. Who you are." Lunaria felt tears on her cheeks, but they were good tears, cleansing tears. She had been carrying, without realizing it, a weight of inadequacy, a sense that she needed to be more, do more, become more to be worthy of this journey. But standing here, seeing herself truly, she understood that the journey itself was making her worthy. Each step, each realm, each lesson was enough. "Thank you," she whispered to her luminous self. "Thank you," the luminous version replied, "for giving me the possibility of existing, for being brave enough to keep walking, to keep choosing, to keep becoming." And then the luminous version faded, dissolving into points of light that dispersed into the air like fireflies. Lunaria stepped through the garden of simple flowers, leaving the mirrors behind. She felt lighter somehow, unburdened. The compass Memoria had given her now pointed toward return, and she followed that direction with trust. The garden path led her up a gentle hill, and when she crested it, she caught her breath. Part 9: The Crystal Spires. Before her rose a city of crystal, soaring spires that reached toward the sky like frozen music, like mathematics made visible, like the physical manifestation of pure thought. The spires caught light from a sun she couldn't see and refracted it into rainbows that painted the air itself. This realm hummed with a frequency that Lunaria could feel in her bones, a resonance that suggested everything here operated on principles of perfect harmony, of aligned vibrations, of reality structured according to laws both beautiful and inexorable. As she descended toward the crystal city, she saw beings moving among the spires. Not fairies, but entities of pure geometry, their forms composed of perfect shapes, moving in mathematical precision. They paid her no attention, absorbed in their own activities, which seemed to involve adjusting the angles of the crystals, fine-tuning the frequencies, maintaining the perfect harmony of their realm. At the city's center stood the tallest spire, and at its base, a figure waited, more humanoid than the geometric beings, but still possessed of an otherworldly quality. This being appeared to be made of fractured light, their form composed of thousands of facets that each reflected a different color. "Welcome to the crystal spires," the being said, their voice perfectly pitched like a tuning fork. "I am Harmonia, conductor of the great resonance. You are the first organic being to visit us in many cycles. What is this place?" Lunaria asked, awed by the precision and beauty surrounding her. "This is the realm of pure structure," Harmonia explained, "where the chaos of possibility is ordered into pattern, where randomness crystallizes into form. Everything that exists must have structure, must follow rules, must operate according to principles. We maintain those principles, ensure that reality itself remains coherent." Harmonia began to walk, and Lunaria followed, moving between the towering spires. Each one sang at a slightly different frequency, and together they created a chord of such complexity and beauty that Lunaria felt she could listen to it forever. "The other realms you've visited," Harmonia continued, "they all rely on what we do here. The gentle streams flow according to mathematical principles we maintain. The echoes repeat in patterns we establish. Even the restless ocean's chaos operates within parameters we set. Without structure, there would only be formless void." They entered the tallest spire, and inside, Lunaria saw something that took her breath away. The interior was hollow, and floating within it were thousands of geometric forms. Spheres, cubes, pyramids, dodecahedrons, and shapes for which she had no names. All moving in perfect, synchronized orbit around a central point of light. "This is the heart of structure," Harmonia said reverently. "The source from which all pattern emanates. Every snowflake that ever formed, every spiral galaxy, every nautilus shell, every honeycomb, all follow patterns that originate here." "It's beautiful," Lunaria whispered. "But also lonely." Harmonia turned to her with surprise. Lonely. Why would you say that? Because it's all so perfect, Lunaria said slowly, finding her words as she thought. So precise. So correct. But there's no room for error, for deviation, for the beautiful accidents that create new things. The Restless Ocean had chaos, but it also had life, spontaneity, surprise. Here everything is predetermined, calculated, known. Harmonia was quiet for a long moment, and Lunaria worried she had offended. But then the being spoke, and there was something new in their voice: uncertainty. You're not wrong, Harmonia admitted. We have debated this among ourselves for eons. Perfect structure provides stability, but it also creates stagnation. We know every pattern that will ever exist because we can calculate them all. There are no surprises here, no discoveries, just the eternal unfolding of predetermined forms. Then why not allow some chaos? Lunaria asked. Because we fear what we might lose, Harmonia said. If we loosen our grip on structure, if we allow too much randomness, reality itself might unravel. The realms might collapse, merge, dissolve. The risk seems too great. Lunaria thought of the Restless Ocean, of how the water beings had explained that they prevented stagnation in other realms. She thought of the forest of forgetting, where endings made room for new beginnings. She thought of the whispering plains, where even impossible wishes were preserved because hope itself mattered. What if, she said carefully, perfect structure isn't the goal? What if the goal is resilient structure, strong enough to provide stability, but flexible enough to grow, to change, to incorporate new patterns as they emerge? Harmonia looked at the orbiting geometric forms, silent and thoughtful. Finally, the being reached out and touched one of the shapes, a perfect sphere, and with gentle pressure, deformed it slightly, introducing a tiny imperfection. Immediately, the entire system adjusted. The other shapes shifted their orbits to accommodate the change. New patterns emerged, beautiful and unexpected, cascading through the system in waves of adaptation. And the heart of structure didn't collapse. It incorporated the change, found new harmony, continued to function, but now with added complexity, added richness. By all calculations, that shouldn't have worked, Harmonia said, wonder in their voice. The system should have destabilized. But instead, it adapted, Lunaria said. Like the beings in the Restless Ocean taught me. Structure and chaos aren't opposites, they're partners. Each makes the other possible. Harmonia placed a faceted hand on Lunaria's shoulder. You have given us a great gift, small walker. A new pattern to consider, a new possibility. We have been so focused on maintaining what exists that we forgot we could also create what might exist. From within their chest of fractured light, Harmonia withdrew a single crystal, perfectly clear and flawlessly formed. This is a seed of structure. It contains within it the fundamental patterns of reality. But now, thanks to you, it also contains room for variation, for flexibility, for growth. Carry it with you, and use it to remember that strength and flexibility are not opposed. They complement each other. Lunaria added the crystal to her growing collection of talismans. The vial of twilight essence, the seed of amber potential, the blade of whispering grass, Memoria's compass, and now this crystal of flexible structure. She was becoming a living bridge between the realms, carrying a piece of each with her. The final realm awaits you, Harmonia said, gesturing toward a crystal archway that hadn't been there moments before. Beyond lies the forgotten dawn, the place where new beginnings originate, where everything starts fresh. It is the last realm and the first, the end of your journey, and its true beginning. Lunaria stood before the archway, feeling the weight and lightness of all she had experienced. She had traveled so far, learned so much, grown in ways she couldn't have imagined when she first left the Twilight Garden. Thank you, Harmonia, she said, for showing me that even perfection can evolve. Thank you, Lunaria, Harmonia replied, for showing us that evolution doesn't mean abandoning what we are. It means becoming more fully ourselves. Lunaria stepped through the crystal archway, and the world transformed one final time. Part 10, The Forgotten Dawn. She emerged into a place of soft, golden light, the light of a sun just cresting the horizon, the first light of morning when everything is new and possible. But this wasn't just any dawn. This was the dawn, the original dawn, the template from which all mornings across all realms drew their character. The landscape was simple but profoundly beautiful. Gentle hills covered in dew-sparkled grass. A single tree with silver bark and golden leaves. A stream, not of liquid light like in the gentle streams, but of pure, clear water that sang as it flowed. And overhead, a sky transitioning from the deepest purple of night to the pale pink and gold of morning. This realm felt empty, but not lonely. It felt like potential itself, like the moment before anything happens, when all possibilities exist equally. Lunaria walked through this eternal dawn, her feet leaving prints in the dew that faded moments after she passed. There were no structures here, no inhabitants, no signs of civilization. Just the pure, elemental beauty of a world beginning. And then, beneath the silver tree, she saw them. The three elders from the Twilight Garden, Vesper, Solène, and Nox, sitting peacefully waiting for her. "You made it," Elder Vesper said, her voice warm with pride. "We knew you would, but it's still a joy to see." "I don't understand," Lunaria said, approaching them with confusion and joy mixed together. "How are you here? This is the Forgotten Dawn, the last realm. The Twilight Garden is. All realms connect here," Elder Nox said, her ancient eyes twinkling. "The Forgotten Dawn is where everything begins, yes. But it's also where everything can meet, if one knows the way. We came to greet you at the completion of your journey." "But I haven't completed it," Lunaria protested. "I haven't found my way back home yet." Elder Solène smiled. "Haven't you? Show us what you carry, child." Lunaria laid out her collection of talismans. The vial of twilight essence, pulsing gently. The seed from the Amber Highlands, glowing with violet light. The blade of whispering grass, still carrying its eternal wish. Memoria's compass, its needle now pointing to return. Harmonia's crystal of flexible structure, refracting the dawn light into quiet rainbows. "Each realm gave you a gift," Elder Vesper said. "Not because you earned them, but because you understood them. You didn't just pass through the realms. You truly saw them, appreciated them, learned from them. And in doing so," Elder Solène continued, "you strengthened the connections between them. You reminded each realm of its relationship to the others. You brought flexibility to structure, structure to chaos, memory to forgetting, chaos to pattern. You wove the realms more tightly together simply by walking between them with an open heart." Elder Nox stood and placed her hands on either side of Lunaria's face, looking at her with infinite tenderness. "But more importantly, child, you found yourself. You learned that you are not too small, not too quiet, not too ordinary. You learned that gentleness is a strength, that observation is a power, that being enough exactly as you are is the greatest wisdom of all." Tears flowed freely down Lunaria's cheeks now. All the fear, all the uncertainty, all the moments of doubt, they had led to this moment of understanding, of acceptance, of homecoming. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now," Elder Vesper said, "you return to the Twilight Garden. But you return changed, carrying with you the wisdom of all the realms. You will help tend the garden, yes, but you'll also help other young fairies prepare for their own journeys when the time comes. You'll be a guide, a mentor, a living bridge between staying and wandering. And someday," Elder Solène added, "when you're ready, you'll take your place among the elders. Not because you must, but because you'll understand that leadership is simply service given with wisdom." "But that's far in the future," Elder Nox said, helping Lunaria to her feet. "For now, you need only rest, integrate all you've learned, and allow yourself to simply be for a while. The journey was important, but so is the resting afterward." The elders led Lunaria to the stream beneath the silver tree, and she saw that its waters were all the waters. From the gentle streams, from the restless ocean, from every realm she had visited. When she looked into its surface, she saw not just her reflection but the reflection of her entire journey, each moment preserved like a jewel in the flow. "Drink," Elder Nox said gently. "And remember, But also, let go of what doesn't serve you. Keep the wisdom, release the fear. Lunaria cupped her hands and drank from the stream. The water tasted like every realm at once. Peaceful twilight, flowing memory, preserved potential, crystallized echo, transformative change, whispered hope, structured harmony, and new beginnings. As she drank, she felt the journey settling into her bones, becoming part of who she was rather than something she had done. When she straightened, the elders were standing in a line, and behind them, a portal had opened, showing the familiar, beloved landscape of the Twilight Garden. She could see the luminous flowers, the sleeping butterflies, the pearl dust paths. But before she stepped through, she turned back to look at the forgotten dawn one last time. And in that moment, she understood the final secret. This realm wasn't called the Forgotten Dawn because it had been forgotten. It was called that because it was the dawn of all forgetting, the moment before memory, the clean slate, the fresh start. Every ending came here to become a beginning again. "I'll carry this with me," Lunaria said softly. "The knowledge that every ending is just a new dawn waiting to happen." "That's the truth," Elder Knox agreed. "Now go, child. Go home. Rest in the garden you left behind. And wake each day knowing you can always begin again if you choose to." Lunaria stepped through the portal, and the forgotten dawn faded behind her like a dream on waking. She found herself back in the Twilight Garden, standing before the Heart Grove, as if no time had passed at all. But everything had changed. She had changed. Epilogue: The Return. The flowers in the Twilight Garden seemed to bloom brighter when Lunaria returned. The sleeping butterflies stirred on their leaves, their wings catching the perpetual twilight and scattering it in patterns of welcome. Even the ancient trees of the Heart Grove seemed to lean toward her, acknowledging her return with the slow, patient gesture of their branches. Lunaria made her way along the familiar pearl dust paths, touching flowers she had tended before she left, greeting places she had always known. But now she saw them with new eyes. She saw how the garden embodied rest and peace, yes, but also how it connected to all the other realms, how the memories in the gentle streams fed its flowers, how the potential from the Amber Highlands gave them their glow, how the patterns from the crystal spires arranged them in pleasing formations, how the change from the Restless Ocean allowed them to bloom and fade in eternal cycles. She sat beside her favorite pool of still water and looked at her reflection. She was still small, still gentle, still quiet. But now she understood that these were not limitations. They were simply who she was, and who she was had proven to be exactly enough. From her pouch, she withdrew her collection of talismans and arranged them on the grass beside her. The vial of twilight essence, which had guided her home. The seed from the Amber Highlands, still glowing with potential. The blade of whispering grass, still carrying its wish of finding home. A wish now fulfilled. Memoria's compass, its needle resting peacefully on return. And Harmonia's crystal, refracting the twilight into gentle patterns on the ground. One by one, she released them back to where they belonged. The vial she hung on a low branch of a nearby tree, where its light could comfort other young fairies. The seed she planted in soft earth, where it would grow into something new and beautiful. The grass blade she returned to the wind, letting it carry its wish to whoever needed it next. The compass she placed in the Heart Grove, where it could guide future walkers. And the crystal she set in her favorite pool, where it could structure the water's stillness while allowing it room to ripple when touched. She kept nothing except the memories, the wisdom, the understanding. These were the true gifts, the ones that couldn't be lost or given away. Other fairies began to gather around her, curious about her return, eager to hear of her journey. And Lunaria found herself telling the story, not as an adventure to boast about, but as a gift to share. She spoke of the gentle streams with reverence, of the Amber Highlands with wonder, of the singing chasm with respect for the courage it had required, of the realm of echoes with appreciation for pattern, of the restless ocean with awe at its transformative power, of the whispering plains with tenderness for all unfulfilled wishes, of the forest of forgetting with compassion for all that is lost, of the garden of mirrors with gratitude for self-acceptance, of the crystal spires with admiration for flexible strength, and of the forgotten dawn with reverence for endless new beginnings. As she spoke, she noticed how her words seemed to settle into the air of the Twilight Garden like seeds themselves, taking root in the hearts of those who listened. Some young fairies' eyes grew wide with longing, already dreaming of their own journeys. Some older fairies nodded with recognition, remembering journeys of their own. And the elders watched with quiet satisfaction, knowing that the cycle continued, that the luminous paths would always have walkers, that the realms would remain connected through brave hearts willing to step into the unknown. When the story was finished, when the last question had been answered, the gathered fairies slowly dispersed back to their tasks and their rest. But they carried something with them now. The knowledge that the garden they called home was part of something vast and beautiful, that beyond its borders lay wonders and challenges and truths waiting to be discovered. Lunaria returned to her work of tending the dreaming blossoms and whispering songs to the sleeping butterflies. But now, sometimes, young fairies would come to her with questions. What was the restless ocean like? Were you afraid in the forest of forgetting? How did you know which path to take? And she would answer honestly, sharing both the beauty and the difficulty, the joy and the fear, the certainty and the doubt. She taught them that courage wasn't the absence of fear but the choice to move forward despite it. That strength came in many forms, not just the loud and obvious ones. That every being had their own journey to walk, and comparing paths was pointless. What mattered was walking your own path with intention and open eyes. Seasons passed in the Twilight Garden. Though seasons there were subtle, measured more in slow shifts of color than in temperature or weather. Lunaria grew into her role as guide and mentor, though she never stopped being herself. Small, gentle, quiet. She simply learned that these qualities could hold great strength when rooted in self-knowledge and acceptance. Sometimes, late in the evening when the garden was at its most peaceful, she would return to the pool where she had released her talismans. The vial still hung from its branch, glowing softly. The seed she had planted had grown into a small tree with leaves that whispered of potential. The crystal still rested in the pool's depths, visible as a gentle light beneath the surface. And looking at these reminders of her journey, Lunaria would smile, knowing that while she had returned home, she carried all the realms within her. She was a living bridge, a connection point, a reminder that all things were linked in the great tapestry of existence. One evening, as she sat beside the pool in quiet contemplation, Elder Nox appeared beside her, settling onto the grass with the patient grace of ancient things. "Do you ever wish to journey again?" the elder asked softly. Lunaria considered the question carefully. "Sometimes," she admitted. "But I also understand now that there are many kinds of journeys. I walk the luminous paths through the external realms. But there are internal realms too. Depths of understanding, heights of wisdom, landscapes of the heart and mind that I'm still exploring. I'm on a journey even now, even here in the garden. It just looks different." Elder Nox smiled, the expression crinkling her ancient face. "Well spoken. You've learned the deepest truth, that stillness and motion aren't opposites. One can travel great distances without moving. One can remain in one place and still be constantly journeying." They sat together in comfortable silence, watching the luminous flowers bloom and the sleeping butterflies dream. And in that moment, Lunaria felt complete, not because her journey was over, but because she understood that it would never truly be over. Every ending was a new beginning. Every arrival was a new departure. Every moment of rest contained within it the seeds of motion. The Twilight Garden held her gently, as it always had. But now she held it back, understanding it not as a limitation but as a foundation, not as the whole world but as a beautiful part of it, not as an ending but as a point on an infinite circle of experience. And in the perpetual twilight, surrounded by dreaming flowers and sleeping butterflies, Lunaria closed her eyes and rested, knowing that when she opened them again, whether in a moment or an eternity, the luminous paths would still be there, waiting for whoever was brave enough to walk them. The realms would continue their eternal dance, resting, remembering, preserving, echoing, changing, hoping, forgetting, reflecting, structuring, and beginning again. And she would be here, a small fairy who had walked between worlds, ready to help the next walker prepare for their own journey into the beautiful, terrible, wonderful unknown. This was her purpose. This was her peace. This was her home. And it was enough. It was more than enough. It was everything.